What if the quiet shimmer above us was not simply a sky of light, but a hall of echoes, a museum of time, each star a frozen memory telling us not of what is now, but of what once was? We look up and think we are seeing the present. We imagine Orion's belt shining in this same moment with us, but the truth, gentle and unwavering, is more unmoored. Those lights may have already faded. Some of them may not even exist anymore. What touches our eyes is not their living flame, but their delayed farewell, a message written long before our kind learned how to stand upright, how to breathe language, how to remember themselves in story. It is a strange thing to realize that everything begins with a delay. Even the sun that warms our skin is not with us in real time. Its fire takes minutes to arrive, and in that fragile gap, the truth of connection shifts. We are never really touching the present. We are always looking back, always living in a world that is already gone. The night sky, vast and serene, is nothing less than a fossil record of radiance. In the way that cliffs carry coral turned to limestone, and mountains carry shells lifted high above any ocean, so too the sky holds its fossils. Only here the fossils are made of photons, ancient isotopes of light. And as our planet turns beneath those lights, as oceans fold into trenches and continents drift like slow tides of rock, we are reminded that deep time does not belong only to geology, it belongs to vision too. Every glance upward is a geological act, an excavation of history written billions of years ago. Stars live and die over spans longer than oceans carve canyons, longer than ice can grind a mountain into meal, longer even than the patient subduction of whole plates of crust into magma. Their lives outstretch ours in such magnitude that even their death masks itself as permanence. But permanence is never true. Decay is everywhere, even here, even above. Entropy, slow and steady, is eating away at the fabric of burning suns. Galaxies themselves unravel into slower spirals, stars drift apart, atmospheres thin, and what seems eternal is revealed as temporary. Not because the universe is cruel, but because disappearance is the law by which everything learns to exist. A fossil is nothing but stone and absence together. A mountain peak reveals its former ocean, not by staying what it was, but by transforming into something it should never have been. And the stars too are fossils of light, carrying absence like a mirror turned our way. If we think of them this way, not as companions glittering above our heads tonight, but as patient carriers of memory, then looking at the sky becomes an act of archaeology. It becomes tender work. A dig, not with brushes or chisels, but with our eyes. And in this digging we encounter another unsettling thought. What if memory itself behaves the same way? What if the way we hold on to moments is less like a living flame and more like a light travelling vast distances through silence, only to arrive later when what we loved is already gone? Could it be that memory is not preservation but a delayed arrival of what we cannot keep? When we close our eyes and remember walking by the ocean, or listening to the voice of someone we've lost, we are not touching those moments as they lived. We are touching light that has already crossed through distance, through shadow, through delay. We are touching fossils of ourselves. And perhaps that is why time seems slippery. Perhaps this is why loss is not felt all at once, but in ripples, because we are never catching up to what truly happened. We are always listening to echoes. The night sky and the earth beneath us teach the same lesson in different accents. The cliffs show us what was buried. The stars show us what has vanished. Both whisper that permanence is only apparent, that what glitters is disappearing, that what feels solid is drifting. Yet in that truth lies a gentleness too. This very slippage grants us beauty. The orange glow of a dying star, the sweep of sandstone shaped by vanished seas, the smooth fossils pressed into limestone. They exist not because their worlds endured unchanged, but because their worlds ended. Their endings wrote the shapes we see now. So when we lie awake, letting the heavens tilt over us, we might wonder, are the stars watching us as we watch them? Do they see our signals stretching outward? tiny pulses of television and radio waves already leaving Earth, echoing our brief presence into the unreachable. Someday, perhaps, our light will become a fossil too, drifting outward, carrying wordless memory into silence. Maybe another creature, with eyes unlike ours, will find those traces and mistake them for eternity, not realizing they are only echoes. And as we close our eyes thinking of this impossible exchange, we are left with a soft uncertainty. What if nothing we see is truly here? What if every beloved gleam, every shining star is already gone, and yet its absence is what allows us to see it all? Perhaps all beauty is born this way, not in presence, but in afterglow. And yet, if this much can be lost, what else might we have forgotten? And yet, if this much can be lost, what else might we have forgotten? Perhaps the most astonishing truth is not hidden in the sky above us, but in the very matter of our bodies, in the ground beneath our feet, in the ocean salt drying on our skin. Every particle of iron in our blood, every grain of calcium in our bones, every clasp of carbon holding us together, none of it began here. None of it belonged first to Earth. It was forged long ago, in generations of suns that lived before ours, vast furnaces burning elements in layers, and then at the end collapsing into turbulent silence. A supernova is not merely an ending, it is a giving. In its violent death, a star spews out iron, nickel, gold, oxygen, spreading into darkness the raw ingredients of all future worlds. Clouds of dust wander, accumulate, swirl and compress until they become other stars, other planets, other ground, other life. And so the Earth itself is nothing more than scattered remains, gathered together, cooled into stone, folded into mountain and sea. To touch a pebble on a riverbank is to press your hand against an artifact of a forgotten sun. To take a breath is to fill your lungs with ancient ash, refined and reworked into atmosphere. We are not descendants of stars, not metaphorically, but literally. Our very substance is their ashes. It may feel like romance, but it is chemistry. Stars build hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon, carbon into oxygen. Higher and higher their forges climb until iron is reached, a dead end, the weight of inevitability, where no more energy can be drawn. Inevitably collapse. Inevitably explosion. And in that explosion, the elements scatter like seeds. For billions of years they drift, waiting for some corner of the cosmos to mold them into something new. Those fragments fell together here, where we now stand, where mountains slowly climb and erode, where fossils sleep in stone, where forests carry memory in cellulose and lignin, where oceans rise and vanish into shifting climates. But perhaps the deeper wonder lies in how much silence separates the act of release from the act of arrival. The death of one star might take billions of years to become a body that breathes, or a fossil sealed in limestone, or a wave folding itself onto shore. Between destruction and creation lies a long forgetting, a span so vast it almost erases the trace. And yet we are here, proof that memory in matter does not vanish, even when memory in mind fails. Does the universe itself remember, somehow through its isotopes and mineral signatures, through the fossilization of light into matter? Or is memory a projection we apply, a story we weave because we are afraid to imagine pure randomness? Still, looking closer, we find geological layers that are themselves records of stellar rain. Iron, distributed so generously by dying suns, rusts into red rock, paints entire deserts in crimson. Gold hides deep, its scarcity a reminder of the few particular explosions violent enough to make it. Even the calcium of seashells, accumulated over millions of years into limestone cliffs, carries the story of nucleosynthesis, the patient folding of lighter into heavier, of simple into complex. These stones are not truly earth-made. They came from stars long gone, scattered across time, stitched into seabeds, raised high into mountains, carved by rivers, cracked by frost, preserved under glaciers, tumbled into dust. And what about us? If one listens quietly enough, without noise, without hurry, the truth settles gently. Our veins are threaded with the remains of collapsed suns. Each heartbeat is powered by iron atoms that were flung outward in a final breath of a star, older than any fossil, older than the oceans, older than the Earth itself. When we speak about memory, maybe this is what we should mean. Atoms themselves do not forget the crucible where they were formed. They carry their origin into eternity, endlessly recycled, endlessly reshaped. But then can we still say these atoms belong to us? Or are we only temporary formations, temporary constellations of matter that will once again unravel? One day this body too will become dust, buried in earth, washed into rivers, eroded, melted, atom by atom drawn back into the long exchange. Our matter will not end. It will simply change hosts, change shapes, take part in futures we cannot begin to imagine. And perhaps one day, far from here, what was once the iron in our blood will be part of some other creature's breath, some other ground's red paint, some other star's ember. If the sky is writing its story in fragments of light, then the earth is writing its story in fragments of matter. This rock, this soil, this hidden fossil, all of it is language carved slowly into place by forces too vast for memory. A star dies. Time forgets. But the evidence is here, beneath us, inside us. And so when we look up and wonder who we are, the strange answer is this: we are not Earthborn after all. We only reside here, carried in as fragments. We are wanderers from elsewhere, inheritors of ancient fire. The ground is made of broken stars. The ocean is salted with stellar dust. The bones we carry are cemeteries of distant suns. And yet if this is true, if we are nothing but remnants of vanished worlds, another question quietly rises. If stars could give us their matter, might they also have left something else behind? Something less tangible, harder to measure. Some faint trace of memory, some silent inheritance of meaning. Could the universe itself remember in ways we cannot? And if so, how would we ever begin to uncover it? How would we ever begin to uncover such a memory? Perhaps by looking not outward but inward, to a rhythm so familiar we almost never question it. The length of a day, the steady turn of earth, sunrise to sunset, the comfort of hours woven into a circle. It feels unchanging. It feels eternal. And yet, it is not. Time itself, as counted by Earth's rotation, is slowly shifting. Very slowly, almost like breath stretched thin. Our days, those 24-hour cycles we anchor ourselves by, were once far shorter. Long ago, hundreds of millions of years deep into prehistory, the Earth spun faster. The day was 18 hours, not 24. Forests unfurled under shorter nights. Seas pressed their tides against shores under a different rhythm, waves sculpting coasts to a quicker pace. Why? Because of the moon. Our companion in the night, luminous and silent, is not fixed. It is pulling away from us, drifting outward by mere centimetres each year, modest enough to escape immediate notice, yet immense when measured in deep time. As the moon retreats, its tidal pull weakens, and Earth's spin relaxes like a wheel slowing on an unseen brake. And so quietly, days stretch. Tomorrow is not the same length as today. The difference is slight, but real, an invisible erosion of time itself. When we stand near the ocean and watch the tide climb, we are seeing this exchange unfold. The ocean's waters, pulled toward the moon, exert a drag on the planet's turning. The friction of wave against shore becomes a cosmic dialogue. Energy seeps from Earth's spin into the moon's orbit, feeding its slow escape. The record of this can even be read in fossils. Ancient corals frozen mid-growth contain bands like tree rings showing daily cycles. In those patterns scientists can count. There were once more days per year, each one shorter. Layer upon layer, the coral carries not only its own life, but the memory of planetary rhythm shifting, the evidence of time's elongation sealed into stone. If the universe records itself in starlight, Earth records itself in rhythm, fossil beds, tidal deposits, sediment trapped in ancient lagoons, all of them whispering, almost invisibly, of clocks that no longer match our own. Not the clock we build into gears and circuits, but the hidden one: rotation, tide, drift. To know this is to lose a certain innocence. The sunrise that feels eternal is only temporary. The length of a morning commute, a child's school day, a season, none of it has been constant through the fabric of history, and none of it will be, not into the far future. This realization humbles. What else do we call permanent, that is only passing? What else do we imagine as stable? A mountain range, a river's shape, even the air that is slipping too, just more slowly than we can see. Perhaps the moon's retreat is not an oddity, but a reminder. Deep time erases illusion. Constancy is the mask, impermanence the truth. And yet, how gentle this truth presents itself. The lengthening of days does not roar. The moon's retreat does not shatter. It glides. It eases. It is an erasure so slow that if you close your eyes long enough, you can almost imagine it motionless. Perhaps that is how forgetting works. So imperceptible that by the time we notice, whole histories are gone. Just as civilizations vanish beneath ash or sea, invisible to those standing centuries later, so do the days themselves vanish, stretching further into silence. And with this stretching comes a thought. What does it mean for life? Is it possible our very biology carries the rhythm of shorter days within it, coded beneath consciousness? In the cellular beat of circadian memory, could some part of us, buried deep in genetic drift, still resonate faintly with the quicker pulse of an Earth long gone? We may never know. Perhaps rhythms fade the same way coastlines do, eroded by passing waves of time. Or perhaps some fragment lingers, invisible, waiting to be uncovered by hands not yet born. To lie beneath the stars is to see time delayed. To lie beneath the moon is to feel time stretched. Both remind us how fragile our definitions are. Day, night. We think these are absolutes, but they are drifting artifacts. Artifacts of a planet in motion, artifacts of relationship. Without the moon's pull, our world would be unrecognizable. The tides would vanish. Climates would reshuffle. The tilt of our axis might wander wildly. The moon is both companion and sculptor, steadying us as it departs. Separation, in this case, is what gives us balance. Still, there is melancholy in knowing the moon will keep drifting. In hundreds of millions of years it will feel impossibly far, its presence a smaller coin in the sky. Tides will become weaker, days longer still, the Earth more sluggish in its turn. How different will the planet appear then? Will other beings stand beneath that smaller moon, measure time differently, remember us through fossils the way we remember corals today? Or will silence have taken ownership by then, folding away all trace? And so the stretching of days is more than a geological curiosity. It is an invitation to humility. It teaches us that what feels most familiar, even the rising and setting of the sun, belongs to the slow physics of loss. Tomorrow is not like today. It never has been. It never will be. Perhaps the only constant is drift. Perhaps forgetting runs through the universe like a river, carrying even time itself away. And yet, if tides can etch memory into coral, if days can lengthen and be remembered in stone, what of other records? What else might hold history in its body? Rivers, deserts, even winds. Where else might the Earth herself be keeping silent journals, buried patiently waiting for someone to ask? Where else might the Earth herself be keeping silent journals, buried patiently waiting for someone to ask? Perhaps the answer is not confined to Earth at all. Perhaps storms are their own journals, etched not in stone or fossil but in motion, patterns repeating across centuries. On our world, a hurricane scars a coastline, a cyclone folds across oceans and is gone within days. We mark them, we name them, but they fade, leaving only debris and stories. Yet elsewhere, in the wider solar system, storms are not fleeting. They are more like mountains, immense, enduring, stubborn against time. On Jupiter, the great red spot has spun for centuries. Generations of humans have come and gone, building and collapsing civilizations, while this single storm has kept turning, larger than our entire Earth. What begins as chaos has reached something like longevity. Its winds rush at hundreds of kilometers an hour, yet the shape does not vanish. It is as though the planet itself keeps a wound open, refusing to let it heal. How strange to imagine a storm as ancient heritage, a structure so constant it can be studied across lifetimes, passed from astronomer to astronomer as though it were not weather at all, but a landmark. Saturn, too, resists ordinary imagination. Around its north pole spins a hurricane shaped like geometry, a hexagon vast enough to swallow us whole. Nature does not often obey such crisp perfection, and yet there it is, straight edges, clean angles, whirling endlessly. It feels less like weather than some artifact, as though the planet itself has chosen to inscribe a symbol into its own poles. Perhaps the hexagon is pure physics, born of rotating gases and waves in the atmosphere, but even so it reminds us uncomfortably of design. Like the spiraled shells of living nautiluses, like the cellular lattice of snowflakes, order appears in chaos, symmetry emerges where none need exist. When we watch these storms, we are reminded that planets are not inert. They breathe differently, they rage differently, but they carry persistence. On Earth, stone holds long memory. On Jupiter, the storm carries it instead. And though these celestial tempests have lasted for generations, they too obey erosion. Even the great red spot is shrinking. Slowly but surely, what seemed permanent will one day dissolve. Someday its absence may puzzle future astronomers the way a vanished ocean puzzles us in forgotten deserts. And still, the very possibility of such longevity raises questions. Can storms learn to endure if fed by structures greater than themselves? Do they become like mountains of air, chiseled not in stone but in circulation, held intact by deeper rhythms we do not yet measure? Maybe 1 billion years from now, some remnant of such a pattern will still linger, altered but not erased, like the faint echo of an isotope in rock or a ghost current frozen into ice. Storms show us another possibility of memory. Movement itself may be a way of keeping record, curved winds folding inward, repeating not once but again and again, leaving no fossil but rhythm. Earth too keeps rhythm in her weather, though our storms vanish within days. What then is the difference between our brief hurricanes and Jupiter's epic cyclone? Perhaps only scale. Perhaps our storms too are stories just told in smaller handwriting. And when we consider this, another thought opens: what of storms on Earth we could not witness? Before us, before even trees or fish, what skies may have held tempests we will never see? Lightning sweeping across primordial seas, great tempests locked in ancient atmospheres, winds that shifted climates for ages. If fossils hold coral rhythms, could sediment still somewhere hold the trace of storms, their chaotic banners written into atoms, into salts, into isotopes we have not yet noticed? The cosmic tempests remind us that the line between permanence and impermanence is not as fixed as it seems. A mountain erodes in tens of millions of years. A storm on Jupiter persists for centuries. An atom of argon lingers in air for billions. What then is fleeting? What truly endures? Perhaps the answer is not found in the material itself, but in the perception of it. To human lives, centuries feel eternal. To galaxies, they are only a passing cloud. And so we return to humility. All memory vanishes, yet all memory lingers in some form. Even the storm that erodes writes its story into sediment, into broken shells washed onto beaches, into rings of coral. Even silence after thunder holds shape, reminding us that once there was sound, for in the end, it is not whether something lasts forever. It is whether it leaves an impression long enough for someone, somewhere, to listen. The red spot may vanish one day. The hexagon may blur into haze. Earth too may lose all of her coasts, all of her current rhythms, but the memory will not die with them. It will only shift form. It will wait in rocks, in ice, in isotopes, and possibly far away, in light already departed, trailing into the dark. And maybe that is the universe's strangest habit, to treat both storms and stones as part of the same patient archive. Some memories written in swirling clouds, some in layered rock, and for those willing to be quiet, willing to notice, both can be read as pages of the same unfinished book. But storms, however enduring, still live in motion. They move, they shift, they grow. What then? Of worlds where instead of shrinking, storms bloom into impossible jewels, where instead of emptiness the skies themselves may rain diamonds, where storms can become jewels. What kind of world are we imagining? It sounds like a fable told to children, a planet where diamonds fall from the sky, where the ground itself is seeded with gems, but the strange and quiet truth is that such places exist, not here, not on Earth's oceans or deserts, but farther out, in the deep chill beyond Jupiter and Saturn, where Neptune and Uranus keep their slow watch in the dark. There the pressures are immense, folding simple molecules into impossible shapes, and what might seem like fantasy becomes simple chemistry. The atmospheres of these worlds are thick and heavy, full of hydrogen, methane, and water, layered so deeply that the boundaries blur. Beneath those layers, far below the calm blue we see through telescopes, the weight becomes extraordinary, pressures so crushing that carbon, one of the most common atoms in the cosmos, transforms. Methane is broken apart, its carbon fragments forced together into diamond, crystalline lattices building in darkness, perhaps drifting downward like snow, like shards of starlight as storms churn them loose. The skies of Neptune may hold rain unlike any we could ever imagine, elegant, glittering dust falling into an ocean of shadow. For us, diamonds are symbols of permanence, of wealth, of beauty carved from the buried depths. We hold them as precious, almost eternal. Yet in these faraway worlds, they may be as common as ice. They may not glitter there. They may only sink quietly, like stones falling into unseen seas, layering themselves into cores we may never touch. Entire landscapes of crystalline dust could be buried inside these planets, mountains of diamond hidden beyond any reach, locked beneath storms that will never part for us. The imagination lingers here. Could there be rivers of molten diamond flowing under alien skies? Could there be thunderclouds releasing crystals so large they strike like hailstones, only to melt into shining seas deeper still? And if this is true, what does it say about rarity? What we value as extraordinary here might be abundant elsewhere, unremarkable, lost in excess. Perhaps every world has its own illusions of value. On Earth, it is diamonds. On Neptune, it may be something we cannot name, invisible to their winds, as air is invisible to ours. Still, the science speaks softly but firmly. High-pressure forces transformations. It is the same truth found in geology beneath our feet. Carbon pressed for millions of years beneath Earth's crust becomes diamond here too, held tight in volcanic roots, drawn upward only in rare upheavals, gems. It turns out our memories of pressure, fossils of compression, and this is why Neptune's storms feel almost intimate to us. They are not alien at all, but reflections of what Earth herself has always known, that under pressure matter changes, that beauty is born in darkness, not before but after the collapse. If entire planets hold forests of diamonds within them, then what of their stories? What would such jewels remember if they could? Could the crystals, silent and rigid, hold fragments of lightning, bottled heat from aeons past? Might they register storms as a tree registers rings, or corals mark tides? We cannot know, but it is tempting to imagine matter itself as memory, pressure as a form of inscription, crystallization as an archive. Perhaps we are surrounded always by silent records, but lacking the language to read them. And even if these jewels exist, what strikes most deeply is not their abundance, but their abandonment. Neptune and Uranus do not care for their treasure. They do not harvest or polish or admire. They only create through chemistry and let creation sink into silence. Millions of carats, uncounted, falling without witness. There is humility here too, reminding us that beauty does not require an audience. Some wonders exist only for themselves. So what are we to do with this knowledge? Shall we imagine our technologies descending someday to harvest those seas, dragging back impossible riches to Earth? Or would even that erode wonder, reducing it to trade, transaction, depletion? Maybe these storms are not meant to be touched, not meant to be taken, but simply to remind us value is perspective and abundance is always hidden somewhere else. For the dreamer lying awake, this is enough to picture skies where clouds dissolve into gems, where lightning breaks molecules into lattices, where storms carve crystals before releasing them. It is enough to realize the universe makes beauty not for us, but out of necessity, out of pressure, out of inevitability. Diamonds in Neptune's skies, diamonds in Earth's crust, they are not emblems of permanence, but fossils of momentary conditions, memories cast into crystal, awaiting erosion. If storms can carve such archives, if pressure can turn invisible gases into glittering stone, then perhaps memory itself is always born this way, out of collapse, out of weight, by forces we cannot see. Perhaps even within ourselves, memory forms more like crystal than flame, compressed, layered, hidden, many-faceted, waiting for the right erosion to shine. And yet, if beauty can fall as rain and then be forgotten, if whole seas of jewels can vanish in silence, we must ask ourselves, what other treasures hide in darkness, never to be seen? What other wonders might we never know, simply because we are not there to witness them? What other wonders might we never know, simply because we are not there to witness them? To ask this question is to look toward the moons of the outer solar system, where silence reigns deep and thick, where sunlight arrives weak and delicate, like a rumor more than a certainty. Among them is Europa, small, pale, veined with scars of red and brown. Seen through a telescope, it does not shout life. It appears barren, hushed, frozen, and yet beneath its hard crust, there is fluid. Beneath its silence, there is motion. Europa is not dead. It breathes, not with air but with water. For beneath that shell of ice lies an entire ocean, wider and more vast than any on Earth. Liquid, though sunlight never touches it, warmed not by sun but by the friction of gravity. Jupiter's pull kneading the moon's interior, pushing, pulling, creating heat in the absence of fire. What results is a sea in eternal night, perhaps stretching for tens of kilometers in depth, a whole world of water, concealed, wrapped carefully away. Imagine rivers and tides moving endlessly in a darkness so pure no eye has ever opened there, no mind has ever seen. We call it ocean, but to imagine it is difficult. It is ocean unfamiliar and uncanny, a place without stars reflected, without coasts, without winds. Pressure there is immense, so heavy that what we call liquid may behave differently, layering into phases of water that we know only in laboratories. Ice that is not quite ice, melting and solid all at once. Water sculpted by forces we cannot touch. A library of alien chemistry turning endlessly in blackness. It may be tempting to think such an ocean lifeless, shut away from light, from air, from the sun. But here on Earth, life thrives in places once considered too dark, too hot, too crushed. At the vents of the seafloor where tectonic plates split and magma rises, organisms luminous and strange grow in chemical fire rather than light. They feed not on photosynthesis but chemosynthesis, building food from minerals from the heat and sulfur pouring upward. If Earth can cradle life in silence and shadow, why not Europa? Could there be living threads winding themselves through water there, delicate and blind, waiting in patience, creatures unlit by stars, unmeasured by eyes, yet complete in their existence, perhaps even whole ecologies, built in secret, never needing to breach the ice above. And if such beings do thrive, what would they know of the universe? They would never see the stars, never watch sunrise, never stand beneath a sky. Their perception of existence would be entirely internal, their rhythms shaped by tides pressed against frozen ceilings, their chemistry tied to vents and minerals rising unseen. For them, light would not be absence. It would be unknown, unimagined, nameless. There is a kind of crushing humility in this possibility, for what we think of as essential, light, day, warmth, may not be necessary at all. Life may not require what we require. Perhaps life's true condition is not light, but persistence, not warmth, but endurance. Perhaps what life needs most is not abundance, but the patience to endure whatever shape a world gives it. The more we imagine Europa's ocean, the more dreamlike it becomes. Ice above, darker than stone below, water stretching like an unspooling thread of time. If life exists there, it has been cut off from the outside for billions of years. It would be evolution in isolation, memory kept not in records or fossils, but in genes, slowly diversifying, changing in silence. A tapestry of forgotten relatives, remote cousins stitched into darkness. And yet it is possible that the ocean is sterile, quiet except for its movement, patient but unfeeling. If so, then Europa teaches us a different lesson, that not every hidden river carries life, not every cave holds echoes. Sometimes silence is simply silence. And yet, is silence not also a story? Even absence can mean something. Even a lifeless sea is a record of what can or cannot be. The very thought unsettles us. Is there memory in lifeless places? Does pure mineral water, turning in deep black, carry nothing but the echo of absence? Or does it remember too, in the delicate sculpting of its molecules, in the strange phases of its frozen layers? Maybe matter itself does not need biology to leave marks. Maybe entropy has been writing all along, in ways we have not yet learned how to read. In either case, Europa humbles us. It humbles us because it exists beyond our reach, and yet within our neighborhood. It humbles us because it is hidden, but not forever. One day a machine, gentle and soft, may bore through its ice, descend into its darkness, and reveal whatever lingers below. And in that moment we will not simply be asking if life exists elsewhere. We will be asking whether silence itself holds secrets we have misnamed. For if rivers of frozen light can move unseen for billions of years, if oceans can remain intact beneath shells of absence, then what else is hidden around us, nearer than we think, buried just below the surfaces we never pierce? What else is hidden around us, nearer than we think, buried just below the surfaces we never pierce? Perhaps one answer lies not beneath, nor within, but in the skies of other worlds, where the ordinary definition of a day, a sunrise, even a shadow begins to unravel. For while Earth's time stretches slowly with the moon's retreat, there are planets elsewhere where time itself bends violently, straining beyond our intuition. Strange giants circling close to their suns, chained in tight orbits, their faces scorched by endless day, their other halves frozen into unbroken night. We call such planets tidally locked to their stars. They turn only one side, paying the price of constant exposure. One hemisphere always alive with heat, the other always drowned in shadow, the frontier between them a permanent twilight that never moves. Yet the truth is more intricate than stillness. As the world whirls swiftly around its host star, the line of morning is forced to race across its surface, so fast, in fact, that the dawn itself can outpace the speed of sound. Imagine shadows sweeping across mountains faster than any storm, the light itself leaping oceans in minutes. On Earth, morning feels gentle, sun climbing slowly, shadows retreating at a pace that gives us comfort. But on these worlds, the dawn is cataclysm. Night can become day almost instantly, an abrupt metamorphosis, a rush of light devouring darkness at impossible speed. For those who might stand there, The simple act of sunrise would be unimaginably violent, not because of fire or explosion, but because of sheer speed. Perhaps even atmosphere itself would be torn by the collision of cold and heat, storms unending, skies in perpetual upheaval. And here arises one of those delicate paradoxes the universe loves to offer. How something so simple as a shadow, just absence of light, can in the right place move faster than sound itself. A reminder that even absence can race, even silhouettes carry velocity, not the waves of matter or energy we expect, but the shifting boundary between what does this mean for memory, for perception? Could it be that what we see as stable, light, dark, are themselves illusions created by speed beyond what we can feel? There is humility in realizing that motion can outstrip comprehension. Our imaginations buckle at the idea of shadows racing, not as metaphor but as planetary fact. And yet, for the cosmos, this is ordinary. For the cosmos, such velocity is nothing unusual. Perhaps it only appears extraordinary to us, because we have been raised on gentleness, Earth's slow dawn, Earth's predictable turn. Without realizing it, we mistake our serenity for a cosmic rule. But what if we lived under such a sky? What would it teach us? Would time still carry the same meaning? If day and night could fall within the span of moments, would memory stretch at the same rhythm, or collapse into fragment and flicker? Perhaps for such a world, identity itself would be brief, shaped by the relentless alternation, elongated shadows erased before they could be claimed. Or perhaps life would adapt, evolve resilience, making a home in twilight zones where extremes meet in balance. In such strips of land, caught forever between night and day, stability could emerge from tension, life thriving only when neither side fully won. And still the thought lingers, if even shadows can overtake sound, then what other boundaries can outrun their own substance? Could memory too move faster than the lives that hold it? Could forgetting be quicker than the moments themselves, erasing even as they occur, fleeting beyond capture? These locked planets remind us that worlds can be strange in ways invisible to first glance. What looks serene in orbital diagrams hides atmospheres writhing, shadows leaping, silence broken by storms we cannot yet imagine. Beauty, in other words, does not always glow still. It can also roar unseen faster than senses can follow. But perhaps the truest beauty lies in the fact that such things exist at all, whether or not anyone is there to watch. Imagine a desert planet, tidally bound, where for millions of years shadows chase across no one's eyes, brushing empty plains, racing valleys without witness. Imagine that speed, that strange motion going unnoticed until now, when we, on our quiet Earth, pause to dream of it. Perhaps the act of imagining is itself enough for memory to exist, even in absence of presence. And as our thoughts slow, we realize this: a shadow faster than sound is not only a fact, but a metaphor whispered to us by the cosmos. It suggests that absence can move too, that voids have their own speed, that what we cannot grasp still exerts presence. A truth that resonates not just in distant skies, but in us. How quickly we lose, how quickly we forget, how even our absences can outpace our voices. What then of places where shadows are not only fast, but where time itself slows nearly to nothing? Worlds where gravity reshapes the very ticking of moments. Worlds where falling never seems to end. What then of places where shadows are not only fast, but where time itself slows nearly to nothing? To imagine such a place is to step toward the boundaries of black holes, those immense cradles of collapse where gravity is so dense that even light cannot slip free. Around them, reality itself bends. Matter falls inward, curving not so much into space as into time. To us, observing from the distance of safety, the process is not an event but an eternal pause. As something falls into the gravity of a black hole, we never see it cross the horizon. We watch matter linger at the edge, dimming, stretching, freezing in its descent. For us, time slows to an infinite whisper. For the object, though, it falls without delay, consumed in a moment, swallowed whole. Which is true, the frozen moment or the immediate plunge? Both, perhaps, or neither. The paradox is quiet, unsettling, and absolute. It is strange to think of time not as a constant, but as something pliable, something that can stretch or collapse, depending on where you stand. We are accustomed to its steady march, seconds, minutes, hours, days, the comfort of rhythm. And yet the cosmos reminds us that the rhythm is not universal. Time near the Earth's surface ticks slower than time in high orbit, though the difference is nauseatingly small. But near a black hole, the difference becomes unfathomable. Entire civilizations could rise and fall in the span of what, to the falling object, feels like only heartbeats. This possibility unsettles us because it shows how relative perception can be. What we call memory may not merely be fragile but also distorted by context. What if there are beings whose sense of time is stretched or compressed beyond ours, whose memory differs not because of forgetting but because of gravity itself? Could existence itself fracture into many parallel rhythms, none wrong, none correct, each lived truthfully though incompatible with the others? Around black holes, light bends back, caught in orbits. A photon could circle the horizon nearly forever, skimming that event line as if it were painting the same stroke over and over. That is perhaps the purest whisper of all, light refusing to leave, refusing to finish its sentence, repeating endlessly until dragged under. What language does silence take, if not that? Einstein's theory tells us this dance is not illusion but reality. Space-time is curved under mass, shaped by gravity. We often describe it with metaphors, rubber sheets stretched by invisible weights. But the truer vision is stranger. Time itself is no longer uniform. The ticking of moments dilates. For those near collapse, clocks do not match those further away. And yet we are all convinced we are right, that our seconds are solid. Perhaps that is the oddest thing about time. It convinces us it is stable, even as the universe constantly proves otherwise. On Earth, erosion eats mountains, tides lengthen hours, isotopes decay predictably, and memory itself erodes as synapses weaken. But around black holes, erosion is not of matter alone, it is of time's pace itself. A different kind of decay, softer and more absolute. The hours themselves melt. We wonder then, what would it feel like to stand so close to such a horizon? Would each breath feel infinite, stretched into eons, or would life itself grind? Could thought, perception, memory function in a time stretched beyond measure? Maybe the closeness would not feel like slowness from within. Maybe we would live normally, unaware that outside the universe had already streamed past us in rivers of centuries. Perhaps our entire lifespan near a horizon would pass before distant Earth even noticed we had begun to fall. Some of the oldest questions begin here. Can information survive a black hole? If matter falls in and cannot escape, does its record vanish forever? Or is there some echo, some trace, still written across the horizon? Physicists call it information paradox, but outside of mathematics it whispers to deeper fears. Does memory itself vanish absolutely, eaten by gravity, or is some unseen law ensuring nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed? If information cannot be destroyed, where does it remain? In the stretched fabric of space-time. In the faint radiation we think black holes slowly leak, evaporating over eons beyond eons. Perhaps in the very particles themselves, hidden so deeply that even we, in our brief span, can only speculate. Memory once again becomes less about what we can keep, and more about what the universe refuses to throw away. So maybe black holes are less like graves and more like vaults, places where time itself slow whispers until everything outside has burned away, and then still continues, glacial, until nothing remains but equilibrium. Maybe what they keep is beyond language, but not beyond existence. And perhaps that is the quietest lesson here, that silence itself can bend, not just sound, not just matter, but time, the most impenetrable silence of all. The closer one goes, the closer one comes not only to vanishing, but to learning that even vanishing has a rhythm. And yet, if black holes devour matter and time itself in whispers, then what of the matter we cannot see at all? What of the weight that shapes galaxies, invisible, unlit, untouchable, yet undeniably real? What of the weight that shapes galaxies, invisible, unlit, untouchable, yet undeniably real? If black holes are vaults keeping secrets at the center of collapse, then dark matter is something stranger still, not hidden by gravity, but made of it, existing all around, shaping the very skeleton of the universe we live within. Everywhere we look, its hand is present, and yet we cannot touch it, cannot see it, cannot feel it. To us it is only echo, only effect, a ghost pulling strings behind the stars. Galaxies spin more quickly than they should. Their great arms, adorned with stars like beads, whirl without tearing apart. According to the math of visible matter, they should fling themselves outward, scatter into dissolution, but they do not. Something holds them together, a weight immense and unseen, draped around each spiral like a cloak. This is dark matter, not because it is evil, not because it resents light, but because it does not interact with it. It neither glows nor reflects, neither absorbs nor shines. To darkness it adds more silence, more invisibility, and beyond it still, dark energy, stranger yet, a force not pulling inward but outward, compelling the universe itself to expand faster, faster, as though space is restless, unwilling to sit still. If dark matter grounds galaxies, dark energy drives everything apart. In ways opposite, their effects are felt, both unseen, both unmeasured, both undeniable. Together they account for nearly everything, and still we walk through life oblivious, seeing only the tiniest glow's trace. To imagine this is to stand suddenly small. The atoms that build us, that shape oceans and cliffs and bones, the visible matter we study with confidence, is barely a fraction. The rest, the majority, exists in silent dimensions beyond our senses, beyond reach. We dwell in ignorance like fish in a shallow pool, believing the current we know is the whole of the river, unaware of the deeper waters rushing unseen past. What is it like, this invisible matter? Could it drift through us even now without resistance, seeping through stone, through our own bodies, unnoticed? Physicists tell us yes, that millions of these unseen particles may already flow through us each moment, leaving no sign, no trace, only probability. If we could somehow see them, perhaps we would be blinded by their sheer abundance, their presence in every chamber of the universe. The vastness we admire, the glowing stars, the swirling clouds of gas, would suddenly be revealed as flowers blooming on an unseen lattice, stalks rooted not in visible soil but in shadow. And in this thought there is poetry of another kind. What if memory itself resembles dark matter, unseen yet decisive, present in its effects though invisible to the eye? We forget a name, but somewhere the trace remains, silent. We lose a civilization buried beneath oceans, but isotopes locked in clay hold its absence. Memory does not always announce itself. Often it lingers in silence, shaping what comes after without revealing its hand. Maybe the universe itself remembers like this, through its dark matter, through unseen scaffolding, through patterns too quiet to measure. The same humility applies to dark energy. That outward acceleration stretching galaxies apart is entropy on the grandest scale, separation, dispersal, silence broadening with every heartbeat of space. And the more time passes, the more alone galaxies will become, one by one slipping beyond each other's horizon, until silence reigns, not because matter vanishes, but because the light between them will never reach. That possibility drifts like a shadow over cosmology, an isolating future where memory of the universe itself is severed, one island of stars cut away from all others, until even the idea of the universe as collective is forgotten. Is it possible, then, that our epoch is rare, not because stars shine, but because they shine together? That we happen to live in this thin slice, when galaxies still greet each other with light, when constellations can still be drawn across great distances. Someday, all that will fade, not to death, but to solitude. The sky will grow lonelier, and the memory of a universe filled with connection will itself become a fact that sounds unreal. But tonight, lying beneath our stars on this earth of dust and clay, we are surrounded by a weight we cannot feel, a force we cannot name fully. It moves through us, structures us, betrays us into humility, and perhaps that humility is its greatest gift. For to know that almost everything is unseen is to be released from the arrogance of total perception. We do not see all. We cannot. We walk always beneath silence. And yet, if even the invisible holds such power, what else might be hidden in plain sight? What other fossils of the cosmos do we not yet know how to read? What memories might remain imprinted across the background of reality itself? What memories might remain imprinted across the background of reality itself? To ask this is to step beyond stars, beyond planets, beyond the visible, into the quiet aftershock of the greatest beginning, for there is a glow surrounding us always, faint, ancient, almost imperceptible. It fills every direction, every patch of sky, every empty space. We call it the cosmic microwave background, yet perhaps its truer name is fossil light, the residual echo of creation, a map of what the universe once was. 13 billion years ago, before galaxies, before suns, before Earth had even the dream of forming, the cosmos was young, dense, opaque. Light could not travel. Every photon collided, scattered, trapped in a soup of particles. The universe was like a fog too thick to see through, a restless furnace where time itself struggled to take form. But as everything expanded, it cooled. Tiny fractions of a second stretched into minutes, into years, into millions of years, and slowly atoms began to hold together. Light was released, allowed to travel outward, free at last. That light is still traveling. It has not stopped since. Every night sky we see sits on top of this ghostly foundation. The light that first escaped is stretched thin now, cooled into low microwaves far beyond human sight. We cannot see it unaided, but we can measure it, and when we do, we discover something astonishing. The universe remembers its own cradle. This background radiation carries inside it variations, delicate patterns, almost like fingerprints. Temperatures differing by fractions of a degree tell the story of where galaxies would someday form, where matter would clump, where stars would ignite. The universe wrote its future into its first message, and it is still whispering it to us now. The strangeness of this is hushed, humbling. Everywhere we look, even into a patch of empty night with no stars, no galaxies, no glow, the fossil light is there. Point an antenna anywhere, and it hums. In fact, when early scientists first discovered this signal, they thought it was noise, perhaps the faint interference of dust on the instruments, or the droppings of pigeons nesting in the telescope's horn. They cleaned it, checked again, and the signal persisted. At last they realized what it truly was, not mess, but memory, not accident, but echo. The universe itself had been singing under their ears all along. To think of this is to reconceive silence. Even void is not empty. Even absence holds radiation, messages, records older than any star. What we take as nothingness is saturated with memory. The background is not just a scientific fact, but an intimate invitation. Look closer. Even emptiness contains fossils. And what is a fossil but time rewritten into matter? On Earth, shells of ocean life become stone. Tree trunks are petrified, transformed into mineral. Here in the cosmos, light itself is fossilized, an imprint of temperature, density, motion, cast across the whole sky. A fossil made not of stone, but of photons. Instead of being buried in Earth, it envelops the entire universe. We are living inside this fossil. It shines upon us invisibly. There is something dreamlike in this thought, that when we open our eyes to the night, we are not truly looking into emptiness, but into a kind of memory museum. Its exhibits arranged not on shelves, but across the vault of heaven, we are already inside its artifact. We are already walking in its gallery. The hum is always there, a lullaby so steady we forget to hear it. And yet, even this fossil will fade. As the universe expands faster and faster under the hand of dark energy, the fossil light stretches thinner, cooler, dimmer. In billions upon billions of years, it may become undetectable, its record lost, erased by distance and time. And so we live in a peculiar age, not only when galaxies still shine together, but when the earliest memory of the universe remains accessible. Future beings, if any survive, may never know it. But we know, for a short while, between the silence of before and the silence of after, we are allowed to glimpse the first breath. Still, we must ask, what does it mean that even light carries memory? Does every particle hold a story? Is existence itself a form of remembering, with nothing truly absent, only transformed into quieter script? Could it be that matter, energy, and even entropy itself are forms of an archive, one that no library could hold, one woven into space itself? The cosmic microwave background is not dramatic. It has no color to human eyes, no shimmer or blaze. It is soft, even, nearly uniform, and yet in its faint texture, the destiny of galaxies is inscribed. Just as sandstone carries ripples of vanished seas, this light carries the architecture of everything that will ever exist. In that sense, it is not only fossil light, it is prophecy fossilized into silence. And if the universe could give us such a gift, an echo of its very beginning preserved in every breath of sky, what other memories lie hidden beyond our senses? What other radiations we have yet to learn how to hear? What other memories lie hidden beyond our senses? What other radiations we have yet to learn how to hear? Perhaps we do not need to look only at distant echoes. Sometimes the memory of strangeness lingers here, in the hidden stories of our own planetary family. Not in the stars, but in the moons, those small companions circling worlds, carrying scars and orbits that whisper of pasts too strange to reconstruct. Some of them are misfits. Some orbit backward. Some wander in ellipses that defy ordinary rules. They should not exist in the calm order of planetary formation. And yet, they do. Take Triton, Neptune's largest moon, a world unlike most others. Its orbit betrays it, swinging the wrong way, circling against Neptune's rotation. No moon forms this way. Its motion is not natural inheritance, it is adoption. Long ago, Triton must have been a wanderer, a child of the Kuiper belt, drifting like a frozen asteroid across the edges of the solar system, until Neptune's immense gravity pulled it close. Not gently, not as a quiet welcome, but as a capture, an exile turned into companion. In that forced embrace, other moons Neptune may have once held could have been scattered, lost forever, their memories erased, leaving only Triton as evidence that capture itself is possible. Triton is scarred by this story still. Geysers spurt dark material into its thin sky, its surface marked by frozen plains as smooth as poured wax. It is geologically alive, rare for moons so far from the sun. This too is a clue. Capture brings friction, friction brings heat, and heat allows activity. Even exile can spark new motion. Its retrograde orbit is a fossil of history written not in stone but in trajectory, an eternal reminder that not all things are born where they belong. And Triton is not alone. Look closer across the solar system, and the gallery of misfit moons grows. Phoebe, circling Saturn, also orbits the wrong way, distant and irregular. Many of Jupiter's outer satellites are the same, wild loops pulling them against the planet's spin. They are likely captured asteroids, snared remnants of early chaos. To us, their paths look improbable, even defiant, but improbability itself is a kind of record, a preserved echo of collisions, exchanges, gravitational negotiations that once shaped entire epochs. In that sense, every strange orbit is not simply an oddity, but a page of the solar system's diary. Every backward moon says, "I am not native. I was taken from elsewhere. I am memory of a stranger past." And this lesson whispers too of identity, of belonging. For if worlds themselves can be adopted, if moons can live forever out of place, perhaps the universe is less about pure order than about reinvention, about survival in whatever orbit chance allows. Here the speculative wonder blooms larger. What if moons can be captured, reshaped, repatterned? Could entire civilizations be lost in such exchanges? Imagine a lost worldlet, shattered or exiled when its companion was dragged inward, its history erased, its surface eroded down to dust. Would anyone know it ever existed, except through the strange dance of an orbit that refuses expectation? Moons then are more than companions. They are fossils of vanished trajectories. And the poetry here lies again in silence. These orbits, these inclinations, these reversed paths, they tell us of violence and capture, but they speak it slowly without sound or fury. Their memory is stored not in voice, but in mathematics, waiting for us to calculate, to realize, to decipher. They remind us that motion itself can be a fossil, just as rock can, just as light can. So, what does it mean to think of moons this way, not as ornaments, but as refugees? Not as decorations in the night sky, but as survivors of a more chaotic childhood, frozen into submission? It changes how we see our own moon, doesn't it? So regular, so faithful, circling with quiet rhythm. But even our moon carries a story of shock and exile, born perhaps in a colossal impact when Earth collided with a wandering body the size of Mars, debris coalescing into the companion we now see. Even here in our most familiar sky, the truth is violence, rearrangement, rebirth. Perhaps belonging in the universe is always provisional. Perhaps every orbit could change, every companion drift away, every system reorder itself, and yet some things endure. Triton has been Neptune's for billions of years already. Our moon will continue to drift outward, but it remains ours, however distant, still writing the rhythm of our tides, still marking the length of our days. Capture does not always mean fleeting. Sometimes an exile becomes permanent home. And so, when we look at misfit moons, circling backward, scarred by capture, we are looking at memory itself, memory of force, of exile, of unlikely survival. They should not exist. By the neat rules of theory, yet they do, which leaves us with the deeper question: how many other improbabilities remain, hidden in orbits we have not yet measured, in companions we have not yet seen? How many other exiles wander still, waiting to be caught, waiting to become someone else's moon, someone else's fossil of chaos? How many other exiles wander still, waiting to be caught, waiting to become someone else's moon, someone else's fossil of chaos? Perhaps the strangest exile of all is a planet that seems familiar, almost kin to ours, but lives now in silence. Mars, red, dry, barren, a place of dust storms and empty valleys, a place where rivers once roared but now lie hollow, where seas once shimmered but now are only dark memory etched in rock. Mars is less a world than an echo of one. We look at its surface, rippled with dried deltas, etched with canyons wider than any on Earth, and we see the ghost of history. Once, liquid water flowed across this desert. Once, perhaps, clouds hung thick in sky and rivers braided through plains. The chemical fingerprints remain even now in the isotopes of gases frozen in its rocks, in hydrogen trapped as ice beneath its dust. Mars whispers, "I was alive once, climate stable enough for oceans, atmosphere thick enough for rain, but whisper only. For life itself, if it ever bloomed, has not yet spoken." Why did this atmosphere vanish? Where did its rivers go? The explanation is quiet but cruel. Mars is smaller than Earth, less massive, its gravity weaker, its protective magnetic field fading long ago. Without such shielding, solar winds could strip away air, molecule by molecule, like a patient thief. Over millions of years, the sky itself dissolved outward, bleeding into space until little remained but a thin, fragile veil, a veil too weak to press water into liquid, too fragile to hold warmth against night. And so, oceans evaporated, rivers dried, mountains stood exposed. Mars became an open wound of memory, its atmosphere erased but its scars preserved. In that erasure is a lesson about impermanence. Even planets, vast, ancient, are not immune to loss. They can be stripped bare, left skeletal. Their climates may change, not once or twice, but forever. Mars once carried rivers wider than any Amazon we know. Today its only currents are winds of dust, storms that can circle the planet and linger for weeks, shaping dunes with the patience of centuries. What remains is haunting because it is absence itself, dry riverbeds serving as fossils, landscapes that testify not to presence but to its erasure. Our imaginations linger here, uneasy. Was Mars once luminous with life? Were there once ecosystems in shallow seas? Perhaps mere microbes carving their first signatures into stone. How far might evolution have travelled before the air left? Could a beginning have been undone before it had time to flourish, leaving only silence where there might have been song? If so, then Mars does not simply echo vanished atmospheres, it echoes vanished futures, worlds that might have been but never were. And yet, silence is not emptiness. Mars still keeps records if we know how to read them. Layers of sediment tell us of water's former presence. Salts locked in stone tell of ancient chemistry. The ratio of isotopes in its remaining gases tells precise stories of loss. What slipped away, how long, by what hand. The fossil of atmosphere lingers not in air itself, but in ratios, in chemistry, in absence, measured accurately enough to reconstruct centuries of wind and loss. If fossils of light tell of the Big Bang, and fossils of shells tell of Earth's oceans, then fossils of atmosphere live here too, telling of a vanished sky. Mars is also a reminder of fragility, closer to home. Could Earth too, in untold futures, lose its sky? Could solar winds strip us if our magnetic field failed, if our balance were broken? Could warming or cooling drift Earth toward echo, toward silence? The imagination shudders, our rivers gone, our skies thin, our oceans forgotten in dust. One need only look to Mars to believe such futures are possible, to see in bright red stone the fossil not just of another world, but perhaps of our own one day. But humility outpaces fear, for Mars is not dead, it is waiting. Beneath the dust water remains frozen, beneath the ice perhaps salt water still moves, and if life hides anywhere, it is in those places, huddled against extinction, clinging to refuges of warmth. What would it mean if one day, as we measure stone or crack ice, we discover organisms still living, tenacious relics, survivors where air has gone? It would mean life does not simply vanish with atmospheres, it adapts, hides, transforms. Perhaps absence can shelter as much as presence can. So Mars holds paradox at its core, a planet familiar, a planet nearly home, a planet barren. To look at it is to see longing, to feel the grief of what was lost. Clouds thinned, rivers ended, skies erased. But to look at it too is to see possibility, to imagine silence itself as stage, to picture echoes reshaping stories within stone, an exile world, stripped bare, carrying always the reminder nothing, not even a planet's breath, lasts forever. And so as we listen to its silence, we might ask, if skies can vanish, if whole atmospheres can be dissolved into the dark, then what else that we take as eternal is only temporary, waiting to leave? Then what else that we take as eternal is only temporary, waiting to leave? If Mars shows us that a whole sky can vanish, then the moon shows us another kind of ghost, not absence, but an unexpected presence, hidden in something that seems featureless and dead. For when astronauts bent to collect the dust of our satellite, when their hands sifted through its grey grains, they startled upon shimmer, beads of glass, tiny jewels embedded in lunar soil. How could there be glass where there are no oceans, no fires, no winds, and yet it was there, glittering beneath sunlight, whispering a story of fire we had not guessed. The moon today appears silent, inert, a monument to stillness. Its craters are pocked and ancient, its hills unmoving, its air gone. Yet these glass beads prove it was once alive with heat. Not alive as we measure life, but geologically, volcanically alive. Long ago the interior of the moon held fire, molten rock rising from its depths, spilling through fractures, erupting into space. In the force of those eruptions, droplets of lava cooled mid-flight, solidifying into glass like frozen sparks. They fell back to the ground, scattered across plains, carried in dust. The moon's sands are not only grey, they were, once upon a time, glowing red. To hold one bead, smooth, microscopic, rounded by flight, is to hold a fossil of eruption. It is silence crystallized, remembrance petrified in dust, and more than beauty, they are evidence, proof that the moon was not always barren. There were times when magma boiled beneath, when pressure burst through soil, when something moved, changed, released. In those beads, the moon tells us I held oceans too, not of water, but of fire. Is it not strange to think of our closest companion this way? Always we imagine the moon as static, eternal witness, but even it carries secret dynamism, hidden histories, the same quiet face we sing to at night, the same pale sweep we charted for centuries, was once an erupting world. Landscapes poured with lava, seas not of water but of basalt, much older than our Earth's written history. The moon's glass speaks of a time when both worlds were molten siblings, still cooling from their cosmic birth. Geology reaches us like memory here. The volcanic beads testify not just to eruptions but to conditions. Gases trapped within them tell us of the moon's inner chemistry billions of years ago. Small ratios reveal vast truths, its mantle, its water content, its evolution. Each bead is an isotope diary, a tiny record of climate beneath the surface, a record of what long since burned away, what fossils do for life, these glasses do for fire. And here again, the theme shifts to silence. For what strikes hardest is the contrast. The moon we see now, so still, so quiet, carries within it the evidence of outburst. The stillness is relatively new. Beneath its quiet face is memory of violence. Just as a fallen tree ring can speak of storms it once endured, so do these beads tell us of fire subdued, of inner breath finally spent. Silence, once again, is not the absence of sound but the aftermath of eruption. Perhaps memory always hides this way, in opposites. Oceans remembered in deserts, atmospheres remembered in isotopes, fire remembered in glass, and perhaps in us too. What quiet parts of ourselves carry fossils of an old fire? What silences do we bear that are not absence, but the hardened remnants of things once burning? The moon invites us to humility in this reflection. We thought we knew it before we touched it, imagined it simply as a cold reflector of our sun, and yet, up close, it whispered a different story, a reminder that certainty is shallow, that even the most familiar companion keeps secrets. If our own moon carries hidden fire in its dust, then what surprises do other worlds keep, waiting, silent, in sands we will one day touch? It leaves us with a paradox that hums quietly as we imagine the lunar night. Permanence is illusion. Change lingers everywhere, even where no atmosphere carries wind, even where no water carves rivers. The moon is still changing, even now, marked by impacts, by the quiet retreat from Earth as it drifts a centimetre farther each year. Over time, the face itself will shift. The tides will weaken, the bond will stretch thinner. We imagine the moon as eternal, but like atmosphere, like oceans, like fire, even it is writing its final chapters. And so, when we look upward on soft nights and see its pale reflection dangling above us, perhaps we should picture not merely silence, but a crowded memory. Seas of lava, storms of glowing droplets, showers of molten glass raining slowly across its plains. A still companion, yes, but also a storyteller, one who has burned, cooled, and drifted, carrying in its soil reminders of fire turned to silence. And if the moon's sands keep lightless fossils of flame, then what else do rings, belts, and orbits conceal about impermanence? What else that we call eternal dissolves quietly even now, unspooling before we notice? What else that we call eternal dissolves quietly even now, unspooling before we notice? The answer shimmers in the heavens, in the most dazzling adornment our solar system shows us, Saturn's rings. For centuries they have been symbols of eternity, graceful bands of ice and dust arcing in luminous curves, seeming unchangeable. Saturn without its rings is almost unthinkable, for their brightness is its identity, and yet science whispers something harder. The rings are dying. They are not forever. They are already fading. When we see them through a telescope, crisp and shimmering, it is easy to imagine them eternal structures, majestic and calm. But they are not solid. They are made of fragments, countless shards of ice and rock, ranging from grains no bigger than sand to chunks large as mountains. Each fragment circles Saturn in its own orbit, motion kept in delicate balance, collisions whispering softly as particles rub together. To us they appear graceful, but in truth they are storms of motion frozen into order, and slowly, steadily, this order is breaking down. Saturn's gravity is not neutral to its rings. Each orbiting fragment is pulled, and the planet's magnetic field interrupts too, drawing particles inward. Streams of icy material rain down into Saturn's atmosphere. Not cascades we can see with the naked eye, but invisible rivers of loss, falling constantly, eroding the crown. The brilliance that makes Saturn so luminous is also what dooms it to impermanence. The very beauty of the rings is a sign of their fragility, a reminder that clarity cannot last forever. Scientists estimate that within tens of millions of years, a blink compared to planetary time, the spectacular rings may be gone, not shifted, not hiding, but dissolved into Saturn, vanished into its storms. Imagine then a future solar system where Saturn is bare, its face no more adorned than Jupiter's or Neptune's. Would such a sky feel emptier, lonelier, less ornate? We might grieve what we will never personally lose, but what others will never even see. What is most haunting is that the rings may themselves be temporary accidents of violence. They might be remnants of shattered moons, fragments pulled apart by Saturn's own gravity, pulverized until they dispersed into a diffused crown. If so, they were born from destruction, and their slow vanishing is simply the closing of that violent loop. Saturn, unwilling to let go, keeps them for a time, then takes them back, piece by piece. A cycle of capture and release, birth and erosion, absence and glimmer. And yet, for all their fleetingness, the rings endure long enough to fill us with wonder now. They reflect sunlight so brilliantly that Saturn glows brighter than should be possible for a planet of its distance. They cast shadows on the planet's clouds, write thin lines across its atmosphere, create resonance patterns in the orbits of moons. Their movement is rhythm, their arcs are song. Impermanence does not lessen this, it deepens it. For to know they are vanishing is to know we are living in a rare time, a punctuation in planetary history where beauty is heightened by fragility. Perhaps that is the most essential truth. Impermanence is not only loss, but also presence sharpened. The rings are mortal, and because of this they matter more. They are our reminder that even grandeur can disappear, even in the scales of planets. And so, when we look at them, shimmering arcs of silver that span hundreds of thousands of kilometers, we may see not just dust and ice, not just motion but memory. They are fossils of destruction, relics of broken worlds held briefly in display, their beauty born in tragedy, their passing inevitable. And if Saturn's rings can vanish, if something so radiant can dissolve into silence, then what of other treasures? What of our mountains of ice, our glaciers, our seas? What of Earth's landscapes that feel eternal but are already eroding? Maybe permanence is never the promise. Maybe the promise is only change. Rings fall, oceans dry, moons drift. Time is less a keeper of order than an author of endings. Even so, there is serenity in watching Saturn. Its rings shimmer not in spite of impermanence, but because of it. They are a breath, a passing detail, but one written so large across the sky that even as they vanish, they remind us how fleeting and luminous existence can be. They are not forever, but they are ours to witness now. And if a planet can carry necklaces made of broken worlds and lose them again, then what of the rubble fields between planets, the scattered remnants that never became whole? Might memory live even there, in fragments too chaotic to coalesce, waiting in silence, neither vanishing fully nor forming anew? Might memory live even there, in fragments too chaotic to coalesce, waiting in silence, neither vanishing fully nor forming anew? To ask, that is to turn towards the asteroid belt, that scattered swarm of stone hanging in the wide expanse between Mars and Jupiter. To the casual eye, it appears only rubble, fragments too small, too few, drifting endlessly apart. But rubble, too, can be record, and perhaps this belt is more than debris. Perhaps it is the skeleton of a world undone. For centuries we imagined the belt as the remains of a planet that once was, shattered somehow by violence or catastrophe, a world broken apart, its pieces spun outward into silence. Later we learned the belt's mass is too little for such an origin, too thin by far, yet the story persists, lingering in imagination like a ghostly rumour. Some scientists say it is not the corpse of a lost world, but the stillbirth of one, fragments that tried to come together to form a planet, but were prevented by Jupiter's colossal gravity. If true, then the belt is not the remains of a shattered companion, but the fossil of potential, a record of a body that never had the chance to become itself. Either way, it is memory. Each asteroid is a page written in stone, preserving chemistry older than Earth. Some are remnants of the solar nebula, never melted, never reshaped, carrying in their isotopes the exact patterns of early solar formation. To hold even a pebble from that field would be to hold the script of the solar system's beginning. These fragments are older than mountains, older than oceans, older even than Earth itself. They are not rubble, they are relics. The belt is also silence of another kind. Between its stones is emptiness, great gulfs of space. It is not crowded as imagination once thought. Ships passing through would not thread a maze, but traverse mostly void, with stones scattered sparsely across millions of kilometers. In this emptiness lies thought. Perhaps memory itself looks like this, fragments scattered far between, unconnected, yet each piece carrying its own truth. If we could assemble them, would we recover a world, or would we find only that there was never one whole, but always only fragments? Sometimes, fragments rejoin, not in lasting worlds, but in collisions. Asteroids strike each other, break apart again, scatter further, and sometimes they fall inward. Meteorites striking Earth, delivering not only violence but chemistry, elements seeded into our soils. In those stones are amino acids, organic molecules, pieces of potential life raining down from rubble fields. It is possible that Earth's own biography began this way, at least in part, that life's precursors were delivered not by Earth's own chemistry, but by fragments of forgotten worlds, skeletons carrying nutrients across void. To think of it shifts everything. The belt is not dead stone, but messenger. It brings reminders, sometimes catastrophes, sometimes gifts. It is both danger and blessing, both impact and offering, a double-faced memory. There is another whisper too. Some asteroids are metallic, iron-rich, dense. These are thought to be the cores of protoplanets stripped bare, their crusts and mantles destroyed, only the skeletons of iron left behind. Imagine that once molten worlds shattered so entirely that only their hearts remain, hanging naked in space like relics of anatomy. To touch such a body would be to place a hand on the memory of a world's internal fire, preserved though the rest is lost. And so, the belt is a paradox. It is rubble and archive. It is absence and proof. It is a reminder that not all worlds finish their stories. Not all planets reach the chance to flourish. Some are interrupted, broken, starved of coherence, reduced to fragments. Even in silence, even in incompletion, they still endure as fossils, orbiting endlessly where they began. Perhaps our grief for them is misplaced. Perhaps no planet was lost, no world destroyed. Perhaps the belt is simply what it has always been. Fragments, not failures. Yet we project stories upon them, the same way we project meaning upon fossils in stone, the same way we imagine wholeness from shards of pottery. In fragments, we sense whole identities, whole beings, and maybe that is what asteroids do in turn. They invite us to imagine the worlds that could have been, the planets that never were. And isn't that its own kind of memory? Not memory of fact, but memory of possibility? To look at the belt is to wander into what if, as much as into what was. What if a planet had formed here? What might it have been like? An Earth twin, a world of oceans, maybe even life? Or a barren husk, like Mercury, scorched by sun, forgotten? We cannot know, but still the fragments whisper as if they remember the attempt, as if they remember the stretch toward being. All proof dissolves into speculation here, but perhaps speculation itself has value, for it keeps us curious. It turns rubble into relic, it makes silence into song. And if skeletons of lost or unborn planets circle still, might water flow in their stones as well? Might ice hide beneath dust, waiting deep inside, reminding us that even in fragments the seeds of oceans endure? Might ice hide beneath dust, waiting deep inside, reminding us that even in fragments the seeds of oceans endure? Science suggests yes. For scattered across the asteroid belt and out among distant Kuiper belt bodies there lies ice, sometimes at the surface, sometimes buried deeply beneath rock. Not lakes that ripple, not seas that shimmer, but locked water, ancient and dormant, frozen into mineral veins. Oceans in stone, carried through silence. It is a haunting reversal of what we know. On Earth, oceans frame continents, immense and open, reflecting skies. But in these smaller worlds, oceans are tucked inward, concealed, carried privately in the dark. No expansive horizon of waves, only pockets of frozen memory sealed into worlds of rubble. Yet water is water, even hidden. And perhaps it is telling us something, that oceans do not always need open space, that life-giving substances need not be visible to be real. That memory can be carried folded, secret, silent. Many meteorites that fall to Earth bear this signature. Touch them, analyze them, study their isotopes, and you see evidence of ancient water, minerals shaped by ice, chemical fingerprints etched in the residue of liquid long gone. In these stones we encounter messages. Oceans once existed here, water once pooled and carved. Even if now the asteroids drift barren, they still hold testimony of former flow, and in that testimony lies connection. For some theories suggest it was these very stones that delivered water to Earth in its youth. Our seas may not entirely be Earth-born. They may also be gifts of asteroids, fragments pouring oceans into our planet from the memory they carried. This transforms how we think of them. They are not rubble at all, but couriers, messengers of oceans ferrying water through the solar system, sprinkling seeds of liquidity, shaping what would become rivers and clouds. They may have been the first rains, not from sky but from stone, falling onto newborn Earth to fill dry basins with something that could foster life. If this is true, then every drop we touch, every tide, every drop of blood in our veins is partly asteroid-born. Oceans not only in stone, but released from stone, invited into motion here. But even if they did not deliver our waters, their role remains humbling. They testify to universality. Water is not just an earthly phenomenon, but a cosmic one. It hides in comets, sweeps through icy moons, lingers in dust. It suggests that the potential for seas is not rare, but scattered generously. It means that silence itself carries oceans inside it, that dryness, barrenness, bleak stone are never guaranteed. Within them water waits. And here rises the question, what else might be waiting there? If ice remains locked in stone, could life ever have clung to it, buried deep away from stars, warmed only by faint radioactive decay or collisions? Could microbes endure inside the deep cavities of asteroids, unseen, unmeasured, hidden? We call them dead fragments, but perhaps they are incubators, carrying not only oceans but biology. And if not life itself, then at least its ingredients drifting endlessly until they find hospitable ground. Asteroids become not markers of absence but potential. Their icy veins remind us that the recipe for life is carried wide, stored even in rubble, waiting to be spilled into worlds not yet alive. Perhaps the cosmos never throws anything away, but circulates, recycles, delivers. A kind of quiet generosity, oceans hidden in barren stone, seeds waiting for soil. Yet water itself is ephemeral too. Radiation erodes it, heat drives it off, impacts shatter it into mist. Even the asteroids cannot hold it forever. Some lose it slowly, sublimating into space, their hidden seas evaporating grain by grain. To be in the right moment is to witness its presence. To come too late is to see only dust. Only silence again. Impermanence, always, is the undercurrent. Still, the idea of oceans in stone moves us beyond fear and into awe. To look at a dry rock on Earth and realize it might be kin to comets, kin to asteroids that shaped rivers here, is to see continuity rather than isolation. No world stands alone, seas and rivers may be shared. Oceans may exist not only across space but across time, moving from stone to sky, from sky to creature, from blood to memory. Perhaps that is the best way to imagine the ice inside asteroids, not as forgotten water, but as potential, as letters sealed in envelopes, carried for aeons, waiting still to be opened. Oceans in exile, but not erased. And yet one question drifts further. If even stone can carry oceans silently inside itself, then what other impossible landscapes might exist out there? Lands where seas are not water at all, but stranger substances still, pooling beneath alien skies. Then what other impossible landscapes might exist out there? Lands where seas are not water at all, but stranger substances still, pooling beneath alien skies. To find such a place, we need look no farther than Titan, Saturn's largest moon, and perhaps one of the most evocative worlds in the solar system. At first glance it is muffled and quiet, its golden haze concealing details the way memory itself hides what it cannot bear to show. And yet, beneath that haze lies a world structured almost like our own, a world with rivers, with lakes and seas, with rain falling from clouds. But these rivers are not water, these seas are not oceans as we know them. They are liquid methane and ethane, hydrocarbons pooling where water would instantly freeze. Titan is a mirror held at a slant, a planet-like moon that whispers, things can look familiar and be utterly strange. On Titan, seas spread vast and dark. They gleam not in blue but in inky shades, reflecting a sky the colour of smog. The largest is Kraken Mare, so wide it could swallow the entire Caspian Sea on Earth. Rivers branching like veins feed into these lakes, carving channels across surface plains. Clouds gather in Titan's heavy atmosphere, condense, and a gentle, slow rain falls, not of water, but of methane droplets. And so the cycle we trust on Earth, the hydrological system that fills lakes, powers rivers, builds storms, exists here too, but written in a different alphabet. Titan keeps its own hydrology, its own story of liquidity, crafted from hydrocarbons instead of water. There is something deeply uncanny in this resemblance. To see patterns we know, rivers, lakes, tides, but filled with alien substance, beneath alien chemistry, suggests that form itself may be as universal as matter is varied. The shapes of fluidity replicate themselves, even if the fluids differ. Titan is not a barren wasteland at all, but an altered reflection of Earth, a sketch of familiarity drawn with strange ink. Rivers do not need water. Rain does not need clouds we would call gentle. Worlds can write their beauty in other substances, under other rules. For us, methane is fragile, burnable, temporary. On Earth it rises into sky but cannot pool in seas, burned away by warmth, destroyed by ultraviolet light. Yet on Titan, colder than Antarctica could ever dream, methane remains liquid, patient. It becomes serene. And as tides move across those dark seas, pulled faintly by Saturn's gravity, we are reminded, oceans have no single recipe. They can form from many ingredients, in many contexts. Perhaps the essential truth is not about what fills the ocean, but simply that there is an ocean at all. And again arises the wondering, if seas exist, could something live in them? Life that does not need water, life not as we expect. On Titanic shores, could there be organisms whose chemistry builds not from oxygen and carbon the way ours does, but from nitrogen, hydrogen and methane chains, woven into unfamiliar biologies? Perhaps not. Perhaps such seas are too cold, too inert. That perhaps possibility itself is stranger, patient, waiting. We do not know. Silence does not answer. Even if sterile, Titan breathes still in a geological sense. Beneath its icy crust, scientists suspect another ocean may hide, a water ocean, liquid and buried, sustained by interior heat. Titan may then be a world of two oceans layered one beneath, made of water like ours, unseen, one above, made of methane, visible to the instruments of our brief visits. This doubling creates a poetic gesture, Titan holding two mirrors, one familiar, one alien, one hidden below, one displayed. Perhaps life might cling to one or both, invisible to us for now, writing futures we cannot predict. But Titan's lesson is not merely about speculation of life, it is about the generosity of possibility. It says the universe does not limit itself to one form. It repeats patterns in different keys, rearranges familiar cycles in alien chords. Rivers can be any liquid, clouds can be made of any vapor, rain can fall in any chemistry. Even silence, even absence of warmth, does not forbid a world from making seas. Titan shows us that landscapes may be familiar in form but utterly foreign in essence. And here again emerges reflection. Do we too hold seas inside us that are not visible, emotions or memories pooled in substances unfamiliar even to ourselves? Titan becomes not only scientific but symbolic, a reminder that what we expect life or meaning to be may not be the only possibility. Beauty, memory, rhythm may be written in unfamiliar elements, hidden in forms we have yet to fathom. So when we imagine Titan's surface, when we picture those golden hazes and black seas, we are not only imagining alienness, we are imagining resilience, a world writing its own cycle, waterless and yet full of rivers, barren and yet full of rain. And even here, methane seas do not last forever. Slowly, molecules escape into space, broken apart by Saturn's faint radiation. Even here, impermanence lingers. Oceans are always temporary, whether made of water or of hydrocarbons. And if even Titan, heavy and strange, builds seas and loses them in time, what else across the cosmos carries liquid yet unknown? Are there planets with oceans of liquid helium, rivers of neon, rains of silicate? If seas can form from methane in cold, why not from molten metals in heat? Perhaps oceans are not a peculiarity at all, but a universal impulse, the cosmos forever finding ways to create pools, surfaces, tides, no matter what the ingredient. Perhaps oceans are not a peculiarity at all, but a universal impulse, the cosmos forever finding ways to create pools, surfaces, tides, no matter what the ingredient. The same can be said of endings too. The universe finds many ways to close a story, and in some cases, a star that collapses once must collapse again. To imagine this is to linger on neutron stars, those dense remnants of suns, bodies already ruined, already stripped, already smaller than imagination should allow. Yet even these remnants, these ghosts of stars, are not finished. They can meet, they can merge, and in doing so they die twice. A neutron star is already a paradox. It is only a few kilometers wide, yet it contains more mass than our sun, matter crushed until atoms fail, electrons driven into protons, neutrons stacked tightly, impossibly close. A teaspoon of such matter on Earth would outweigh mountains. These stars are already collapse perfected, gravity condensed into near limit. Their magnetic fields howl, their pulses beat like cosmic lighthouses, sweeping rhythms across millions of kilometers. They are remnants, but they are not quiet. When two such remnants orbit each other, spiraling slowly inward, the story becomes stranger still. Each orbit radiates gravitational waves, ripples through space-time itself, bleeding away energy, drawing them closer. Over millions of years they tighten like dancers in circles, pulling inexorably inward until, at last, they touch. And when they do, their gravity exceeds even their tolerance. The merger is ferocious. A shudder through space-time, a roar of gravitational energy, faster and wider than anything our instruments have yet touched. The two become one, and the one is no longer a neutron star. It is something quieter but darker, a black hole. Here lies the second death, a star that once burned, lived, collapsed, endured as a neutron relic, dies again, twice extinguished, twice transformed. What remains is the most absolute silence we know, a hole where even light cannot return, a region where time folds into whisper. The twice-dead star no longer radiates beams or pulses. It is an absence so complete it becomes presence. And in this double ending, something else is born. For these collisions create elements. Gold, platinum, uranium, some of the rarest materials in the universe are forged in this fury. In fact, much of the gold we know on Earth was likely born in such mergers, jewels made not from ordinary geology, but from stars dying twice. To carry a golden ring on your hand, then, is not only a sign of human bond, but the memory of two suns colliding, a fossil of fire worn silently through history. Perhaps no material better illustrates paradox, brilliance born from endings, light hammered into permanence by collapse. And yet, like so much of the cosmos, this process carries both grandeur and humility. The neutron stars do not choose to meet. They are pulled, their lives are predetermined by gravity's patience, set on paths that end inevitably in merger. In this we might see something unsettling, that destiny may exist, not in metaphors but in raw physics, that some unions are unavoidable, written into orbits long before anything alive can witness them. Such inevitability reminds us how short our scale is, how little of the script we can see. What must it mean, then, to imagine the universe littered with such second deaths? To picture collisions happening unseen, far from our gaze, even now? Perhaps the darkness we mistake for emptiness is studded with such fires, such endings, such transfigurations. Perhaps the fabric of space-time is constantly ringing with whispers we have not yet learned to hear. We catch only a fraction, our instruments trembling with hints, a pattern here, a ripple there, but the whole chorus escapes us. And here, once again, memory folds in. If the universe forges elements through such deaths, if remnants build new matter, then nothing is truly erased. The dead enrich the living, the collapsed nurture the forming, bodies that vanish produce substance that endures. Could this be the truest rhythm of existence, that endings are not ends at all, but beginnings tangled in disguise, that even suns may die twice, and still create gifts for futures they will never know? To think of this is not to despair, but to soften into humility. The cosmos makes meaning not by avoiding death, but by weaving it into continuity. The gold in our blood, the rare elements in mountains, even the matter powering our devices, these are fossils of stars that collapsed and then collapsed again. Their silence is present in us, carried in rings, in stone, in thought. To be alive, we are vessels of suns that died twice. And yet, speculation drifts further. If matter can be reborn through destruction, if memory can be cast in elements and light, then might there be some hidden archive in every atom, some unseen record of its birth? Could collapse itself be a form of persistence? A way the universe insists nothing is forgotten, only transformed. We do not know, we cannot know, but as we imagine stars unmade and remade, we are reminded that silence too is generative, and endings too carry futures. So what then of the forces that ripple out from these unions? For such collisions do not only produce matter, they sing in space-time. They release vibrations that travel outward like chords too immense for ears, yet real, measurable, whispering through the cosmos. Long after the light has gone, they release vibrations that travel outward like chords too immense for ears, yet real, measurable, whispering through the cosmos. Long after the light has gone, for though the universe is vast silence to us, it is not mute. It hums, it shivers, it trembles with ripples of gravity, waves expanding from collisions, from mergings, from moments so massive that matter itself bends the fabric of existence. These waves are not sound as we know it, carried through air, but sound in a truer sense, patterns, frequencies, vibrations felt by reality itself. The cosmos is playing chords, and we are only just learning how to listen. When two black holes collide, or when neutron stars meet, the event does not only release light and matter, it also reshapes the stage. Space-time itself ripples outward, like a pond struck by stone. These ripples are infinitesimal, stretching and compressing, distances on Earth changing by less than the width of a proton, and yet they travel unfettered, billions of light years if they must, across void and silence, until they reach us. Perhaps passing through your body now, unnoticed, as silently as wind rustling the thinnest branch. For decades, such waves were only theory, predicted by Einstein, dismissed by many as forever undetectable. But in 2015, humans finally heard them not with ears but with instruments vast as cathedrals, arms of lasers stretching kilometers, fine enough to catch the shift of space-time itself. At last we had proof. The universe sings, even if its notes are soft beyond imagination. And that first chord we heard was the echo of two black holes merging over 1 billion years ago. By the time it reached us, Earth's lands had shifted, continents had drifted, life itself had evolved where none before had been, and still the wave arrived, brushing us delicately, reminding us that memory moves. It is humbling to think of sound so immense and so faint at once. The human ear captures only a narrow range, fragile vibrations in air, but space-time itself carries frequencies we cannot fathom. Whole symphonies of collision may be echoing now, overlapping, weaving chords into silence. What seems still is not still at all. It is pulsing, alive with remnants of violence turned into vibration. Perhaps silence does not exist in the cosmos at all. Perhaps everything hums with secret notes waiting for the right listener. The poetry here lies in time. A collision may happen in a moment, ending in fire and collapse, but the vibration of it journeys on for billions of years, and when it is finally caught, it is not just detection, it is resurrection. The event occurs again in us, through us, in our instruments' trembling beams. In this way, gravitational waves are fossils too, fossils not of stone, not of light, but of sound. Sound lifted from silence, carried patiently until received. And what other chords lie hidden, still undetected? What ancient songs shudder through the dark, too faint for us yet? Until our instruments sharpen, could echoes from the earliest eras still travel now, carrying memory of beginnings long before stars? A primeval background of gravitational waves may still be there, older than the cosmic microwave background itself, humming faintly beneath it. Reading such a chord would be reading the heartbeat of creation itself. The difference between silence and sound becomes porous here. Our ears cannot hear, yet the ground moves as if struck. Our eyes cannot see, yet space itself stretches where the wave passes. Perhaps this blurs not only sense but philosophy. Is silence absence, or is it simply noise too subtle to feel? Maybe the universe has never been quiet at all. It has always been resonant, always in motion, always releasing chords into its backdrop. We begin to imagine everything singing, moons pulled in orbits, stars vibrating faintly, galaxies colliding with slow, thunderous chords. Not melodies as our ears compute them, but structures of motion reverberating in space-time. Every mass, every body, every orbit produces its own faint note. The universe's orchestra, patient and immense, each object an instrument, each motion a tone, overlapping faintly into symphonies of silence. And if this is true, then listening becomes a new kind of archaeology, not dust-brushing bones, but measuring faint vibrations, not digging trenches but catching ripples long after their causes have died. In the sound of gravitational waves, we are allowed to touch events no longer existing, to be present at collisions already gone, to brush against histories more ancient than language itself. And so, what does it mean that we live in this time when our ears are finally opened, when silence is revealed not as absence but as music too delicate for us before? Perhaps it means the universe is never finished offering memory. It only waits for us to attune the senses we have neglected. But this raises another question. Dusk-like, if space-time itself can hum, sing, and vibrate with echoes of unimaginable events, what does it mean to say the universe has an edge? What happens where chords cannot reach, where expanding acceleration sweeps galaxies past each other and silence grows absolute? What happens where chords cannot reach, where acceleration pushes galaxies beyond sight, where silence grows absolute? To ask this is to place ourselves at the edge of all we can know, the boundary of the observable universe. It is not a wall, not a physical border, but a horizon of light. Beyond it, galaxies almost certainly exist, countless and sprawling yet invisible to us, not because they are not real, but because the universe is still too young for their light to have arrived. We live enclosed not by ignorance, but by time itself. The observable universe is like a sphere, with us at its center, not because we are important, but because horizons form around each observer. Every direction we look, we see the past unfolding, galaxies stretched into earlier versions of themselves, stars whose light left before Earth had oceans, before Earth itself existed. The farther we look, the younger the cosmos becomes, until at last we reach the faint haze of the cosmic microwave background, the fossil glow of first light, after which no further sight can yet pass. Beyond it, the universe continues, but its light is still locked in transit, never yet arrived. In this way, the boundary is both mirror and veil. A mirror because what we see farther back in space is also farther back in time, showing us not only other galaxies but echoes of our own beginnings. A veil because past a certain point we cannot see at all. We know only absence, and that absence humbles us. The cosmos does not end where our vision does. It keeps going in silence deeper than we can extend. To contemplate this edge is to feel the paradox of presence and disappearance together, for at the cosmological horizon, galaxies are not merely faint, they are gone from reach, pulled faster than light by the expansion of space itself. Their signals will never cross back to us. They vanish not in destruction, but in separation, eroded from our reality by acceleration. In them stars may still shine, civilizations may rise or fall, stories may play out full of meaning, but for us, they no longer exist, because no thread can connect. The mirror reflects nothing, and in that emptiness we too begin to disappear. There is grief in that thought, a grief that does not belong to us alone, but to every observer anywhere in the universe, for every point in space has its own horizon. Every being lives encircled by an edge beyond which absence spreads. The cosmos is simultaneously infinite and fragmented, each island of galaxies destined eventually to fall into solitude. Isolation deepens everywhere, silencing connection one horizon after another, until only local light remains. On scales large enough, loneliness is the universe's final climate. And yet there is wonder too, for within our horizon we still see billions upon billions of galaxies, constellations drawn across distances too vast for imagination. Even as everything expands away, there is still time left for light to arrive. We are still living in shared sky. To know this is to feel rarity, to realize that this window is temporary, that someday skies will no longer reveal what they do now. In the far distant future, observers may see only a single galaxy, cut away from all else, and imagine falsely they are alone in the cosmos. We, by contrast, live in a golden age of horizon, able to see abundance, to chart the choir of galaxies, to feel rich in connection. Perhaps this makes our position both fragile and sacred. Fragile, because knowledge is slipping even now, receding with every expansion. Sacred, because in this brief span we can bear witness to truths no future beings may retrieve. The fossil light of origin, the expansion's acceleration, the spread of dark energy, the sheer abundance of galaxies, they are all visible to us now, like stars glittering just before dawn erases them. To know is to hold is to remember. And yet, what lies beyond? Could regions outside our horizon carry entirely different galaxies, stars that formed differently, forces balanced in other ways, perhaps even physical laws not quite the same? We cannot know, we cannot measure what cannot cross into us. Still, the wonder of speculation endures. The cosmos might be stranger than geometry, deeper than science imagines, plural in ways we cannot conceive. What passes beyond our edge may not only be hidden, but unrecognizable. And still we return to the mirror, for this horizon, like any boundary, reflects as much back upon us as it conceals. It shows us our finitude, that our knowing depends upon distance, illumination, delay, that to exist is always to live inside a partial view. The mirror reveals our smallness, not to belittle, but to soften us into humility. What is visible is enough to fold us into awe. What vanishes is enough to teach us surrender. When we stare too long into the horizon, we may feel like we ourselves are stretched, lengthened, diluted by time. Indeed, in the slow flux of expansion, everything is carried outward, every galaxy receding, every particle succumbing to expansion's patient pull. We are not fixed within the mirror, we are its fleeting figures, soon erased. And so the horizon is both cradle and grave. It gives us the shape of the cosmos, but also the reminder that visibility is a brief gift. Beyond this mirror lies the unseen, and beyond that unseen may lie silence, or abundance, or infinities layered beyond count. If galaxies can disappear simply by slipping out of reach, without dying, without collapsing, then what of us? What of our own stories, our own light, our own brief signals sent outward into dark? Are we too destined not for destruction but simply for dispersal, lost not because we end, but because no one remains to see?